Welcome to the Pastor Podcast with Randy and Andy, where Sunday's sermon sparks Wednesday's conversation. Each week, they sit down to dive deeper, reflect thoughtfully, and wrestle with the themes of this week's message. Their goal is to explore faith more fully, ask the hard questions, and invite you into a dialogue that goes beyond the pulpit.
Welcome into the podcast, everyone. I'm Pastor Randy Moore.
And I'm Pastor Payton.
And we are right in the middle of the season of Lent.
We're at mid-Lent.
It's a long season, 40 days, not counting Sundays. So what's that make it, about 44 days maybe altogether?
Well, there's
once you add into Sundays.
6 Sundays.
6 Sundays. Okay,
yeah,
so 46 Sunday, or 46 days. Yeah. Okay, anyway, we're halfway through. This year our theme has been 40 days to freedom, and 40 is a really important biblical number. I wonder why. We haven't talked about that. I mean,
I don't know.
It occurs over and over again, but I wonder what's special about the number 40, because rarely does it mean actually 40. It just means it's a good amount of time.
It's a symbol for transformation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just look at it from a biological standpoint, it takes about 40 days or 6 weeks or so for a new pattern or a new habit to form within our lives, if you think about it. Yeah. So I wonder, I've always wondered if there's not something, don't quote me on that necessarily, but I wonder if there's something to it.
I thought you were going to talk about gestation. Did you know it takes 40 days? But no, I like that.
No.
Okay.
It just takes about that much time to get a habit going.
Yeah, and for us, the 40 days does represent transformation. It's the time between from what we were to who we will be. And this is that time right in the middle, and it's a time of transformation.
Right, and sometimes it might be 40 minutes. Sometimes it might be 40 days. Sometimes, in the case of the Israelites, it was 40 years before they went from the old world to the new world. And so it's really a symbol for our formation and transformation, as you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And this week we come to part of the Elijah story, one of the great prophets in Israel. And you started with that question that we often start with here, and it's how is it with your soul?
Right.
And so why don't we talk about
it? And then I and it's hard to answer that question. I mean, we've talked about that reality on this podcast, where that soul question is a little mysterious, and so then I followed it up with, on a scale of 1 to 10, how close do you feel to God right now? And I can't say that I personally can put a number to what I feel when it comes to my relationship with God. But I will say this season of Lent has helped me, because I feel like I've drawn nearer to God. Mm-hmm. And so if nothing else, that's a good Lent, right? You feel closer. Mm-hmm. You can't put a number to it, but you're moving in the right direction. That's where I'm at right now.
Right. And God is always near. I think that's something that we can affirm. God is always near, even when God feels far away. But it's typically that we've drawn off rather than God has drawn off. Yeah,
and I mean, it's important to note that it's more than an emotion. Nearness to God is more than a feeling. The Christian tradition is very clear about this, that God is beyond thought, God is beyond language, God is beyond feelings. And so when we're drawing closer to God, really, I would suggest that we're really living with an awareness of God beyond whatever it is that we're experiencing physically in this world. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons I pray almost every sermon before I preach. I'll say, Lord, help us to be present to you, even as you're here present with us. That is the goal in a nutshell. I can't come up with a better prayer than that, so I just keep praying it. But and so when I say I feel closer to God, Randy, really, I feel like I'm just a little more aware of God's presence with me throughout my day.
That happens in human relationships too. We could be in a room together, but my mind can be somewhere else, and I'm not really present to you. Right. And so it's about acknowledging the presence that God is there.
Right. I'm being sustained. You're being sustained in this moment by a power greater than ourselves, of a power of what the gospel would say. It's a power of infinite love, greater than ourselves in this very moment, no matter what we're going through. And when we talk about growing nearer to God, it's really, I'm developing that awareness.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's back up just a little bit, do a bit of a review, because as we said, we are halfway through Lent, and so you've already dealt with some other 40-day stories.
Yeah, so it really Lent starts with the story of Jesus, his 40 days in the wilderness, and Bishop Malone, she talked about that, did a wonderful job. If you haven't watched the sermon, watch the sermon, it's a good one. And so that's what Lent really is based on, is Jesus' own 40 days in the wilderness to prepare him for ministry. And so Bishop Malone started the series in many ways, but then we talked about Noah, his 40 days on the ark. We talked about the Israelites, their 40 years in the wilderness. And then this past week we talked about Elijah, and it was really a 40-day journey back to the start. And I love, of all the ones I preached on so far, this is the one that was the most meaningful for me, probably because it's not one we talk about, right? I mean, we know Noah's Ark, we know the Israelite story about Egypt and all that, but here's a 40 type moment where Elijah's 40 is different, and a lot of what he's dealing with and what he experienced hits home, I think, in many ways for us today.
It hits home for us pastors, I think, too, because we can so readily identify with burnout. And we've talked about this on the podcast many times before, even in the context of doing that soul check-in. And when we're examined by our superiors in the church, they want to know how our souls are doing, because they don't want us to burn out. And it's not because they're just trying to keep an eye on us and check on us and make sure we're effective. They want to make sure we're healthy, that our souls are healthy.
Right.
And because pastors, not that we're unique in this, but we are subject to burnout.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, we could get very, very busy, spinning a lot of different plates. And then what happens is we forget. It's not like we don't know why we're doing it, don't get me wrong, but we just give until we have nothing left. And really what Elijah's story, I think, teaches us, if nothing else, is that the reason we go on the 40-day journey sometimes, the reason we get away and go on retreat sometimes, is so that we can have the strength to return and then be able to invest in that which truly matters. The story is just so helpful as a reminder in that.
Now, I want to come back to the whole pastor thing, because both in my role as a journalist and in my role as a pastor, there really are a lot of similarities. They are both 24/7 kinds of jobs. It's not that often I'm called in the middle of the night in either case, but you're always on call. If something happens, depending on how, the gravity of the news story, it's an all hands on deck situation. You don't wait for a telephone call, you go in. Being a pastor is the same way. I've not been called in the middle of the night that many times to make a call on a member of our congregation, but it's a 24/7 thing. And I operated as a journalist, and I operate as a pastor with a priority list of things to do, a to-do list that's prioritized by importance, and then I operate with a calendar. But very, very quickly, both as a journalist and as a pastor, those things can get blown up.
It's just out of control. Yeah.
Because we are on call, because the call comes and we have to change plans.
And as servants, we want to please people, so we don't typically say no to anything. We're going to say yes, because we want to please. And you can just get extended too far out and really, really deplete your spirit if you're not careful.
So Elijah has a prescription to prevent burnout or cure yourself from burnout.
Well, I mean, and I think it's interesting to kind of point out what led to his burnout too. I mean, he was fighting the good fight. He really was. So Elijah is in his stories in 1st and 2nd Kings. And I talked about how 1st and 2nd Kings in the Hebrew Bible, it really is there to give us a picture from the ancient Jewish mindset of what a good king looks like, what a good leader looks like. And a good leader worships God, the God of Israel. A good leader, according to Kings, is interested in justice for the people. And then a good king is humble. Those are the kind of the three things we find in 1st and 2nd Kings. And so by the time we get to Elijah's story, everything has gone off the rails. David's gone. Solomon's, he's died too. And then what happens then is the Israelite people begin to fracture and split apart. So they're a divided nation. They've divided into different tribes. There's 12 tribes, but two of the tribes stay south and two of the tribes go north, really what happens. And some of the people even begin to worship the ancient God, an ancient God other than the God of Israel. I've heard it described as the God of Baal, or I think the technical way to say it is Baal.
You had a pause there.
Yeah, there's a little pause. But Baal is the God of the rains. And so they begin to worship the God of the rains rather than the God of Israel. And I looked at that and I thought, well, what's the big deal? I mean, okay, we should be able to worship whatever God we want. We live in a free society. And I do believe that's important to give people the freedom to worship however they feel led. But the thing about Baal is it was the rain god. Mm-hmm. And this was an agricultural society. Rain equals crops. Crops equals wealth. Wealth equals economy. Really what that ancient god really manifested or was about is the God of prosperity. And so when prosperity becomes our ultimate God, then things go off the rails. Mm-hmm. And according to 1st and 2nd Kings, what happens really is the kings begin to steal the land, the courts begin to become corrupted, the poor are no longer protected. Enter Elijah into this scene. And that's
ripped from the current headlines.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up, Randy. Right. Yeah. It just seems like history repeats itself over and over again. You can't help but to notice some of the correlations. And he has this big showdown with these prophets of this other God, and he wins. And I think Elijah somehow thinks this is the moment people are going to come back home to Israel. And they don't. Mm-hmm. Jezebel, the queen, tries to kill him, and he's just done.
Right.
And so that's what leads to the burnout. He's fighting the good fight. He's got nothing left. He's getting ready to quit. And just, I mean, I didn't get into it in my sermon much, but just think about the difference between worshiping the God of prosperity versus the God of Israel. What's the defining feature of the God of Israel in the Bible? The God of Israel is the opposite of the prosperity stuff. The God of Israel is the protector and the liberator of slaves.
Right.
So I mean, the God in which we worship ultimately determines the people we become. And this is where it just center stage right here and why it matters.
And we think we are monotheistic, and even the people of God, took them a while to become monotheistic. They recognized that there were other gods and sometimes worshiped them.
Along with the God of Israel.
Right.
Mix it all up.
Right. And then here we are in the 21st century, and we think we're monotheistic, but we have other gods as well.
Right.
That we worship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, was it Paul Tillich who talked about your God is, what does he just say? God is your ultimate concern. Mm-hmm. It's your orienting. It's that which kind of guides your ship of your life.
Mm-hmm. What gets your attention.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where are you really invested here? Mm-hmm. And we might use the God language. We might use Jesus talk. But, you know, what the prophets like Elijah would really point us toward is, okay, if you're going to worship God, then it has to translate into how you live your life too, and how we organize as a community. So, yeah, Elijah's about ready to quit though. Mm-hmm. And he basically says, that's it, I'm done. He even says, take my life, Lord, I'm done. And so the first thing God does for Elijah, though, is he doesn't give him a new spiritual assignment. I find this very interesting. Mm-hmm. He says to Elijah, God says to Elijah, get some sleep.
Take a sabbatical.
Take a sabbatical. Yeah. I mean, and so Elijah goes to sleep, and an angel comes and feeds him. Yeah. And that happens twice early on in 1 Kings 19. Uh-huh. And I feel like maybe in that moment, really, what we find is the first and really most important thing when it comes to getting out of burnout is, are you taking care of yourself physically? Sometimes taking care of our physical self is the most spiritual thing that we can do. And yet, as I pointed out in the sermon, Randy, so often we do the opposite, right? Mm-hmm. In our society, where prosperity is important for us, I'm not going to say that's our God. I'm just saying prosperity is a big driver. Sure. The push is for more and more and more. Mm-hmm. And what that means for us many times is we are burning out, but we refuse to acknowledge it, even though all the signs are kind of there.
Mm-hmm. The acknowledgement is point one in the anti-burnout plan, and then it's get some rest.
Yeah.
Get some rest,
Admit
get some
it,
food.
Admit it and get some rest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I talked a little bit about the signs of it, which I think are important. What are the signs of spiritual burnout? Well, that which was once meaningful for us is no longer working.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer feels like work. Worship feels cold. Service to others annoys us, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then emotionally, what begins to happen is we begin to tap out. That's kind of like stage 2.
Yeah.
Our compassion begins to wane, and we're thin-skinned and easily offended.
Never been there.
It's never happened to me. I'm not. I read about this.
You're right.
and then and like stage 3 is like you just quit.
Uh-huh.
I don't pray anymore. I don't serve anymore. I don't worship anymore. I'm done. I don't need this in my life anymore. Just walk. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to admit it when you're burnt out. And then the first step out, kind of as we talked about, is the rest. But after Elijah rests, then of course that's when the 40 days for him begins. And so he gets his strength back, and then he begins the journey to Mount Oreb or Mount Sinai. And it's where Moses, of course, had his moment with God. And for me, this symbolizes Elijah's going back to the basics. He's going back to where it all began for him. And I think that's really one of the most important things for any of us to remember. We talk about Lent being spring training for Christians, right? We've talked about that. And this is Elijah embodying for us spring training. Like, what do the baseball players do during spring training? They do the basics and
the fundamentals.
The fundamentals of the game. And so he goes and prays. Mm-hmm. And then the moment comes where he meets God, and it says God's not in the wind and the earthquake or the fire, but and the line is, comes a sheer silence.
Yeah.
Which is a quiet presence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've all, well, I shouldn't say we all, but I know you have and you do practice that kind of silent prayer. Mm-hmm. And it's not for everyone, or at least a lot of people don't think it's for them, because when most people pray, they want to be able to say something, and they're uncomfortable in the silence. But if you can get used to sitting still and silent, pretty soon it's not uncomfortable anymore, and it is restorative.
Yeah, it is very much so. And the Bible talks about the importance of silence again and again. Elijah clearly is practicing that idea of contemplative prayer and silence here. Jesus certainly, there's verses in the Gospels that allude to it. When Jesus goes off by himself in the middle of the night to pray for hours on end, he's not talking the whole time. He's incorporating some silence. And then there's the passage in the Psalms, "Be still and know I am God," which certainly points to this idea of contemplative prayer. But it's hard to get started. I admit it. Even for me, Randy, that's the practice I've incorporated back into my routine, is I've tried to do 10 minutes of silent prayer a day. Mm-hmm. And at first it was really hard. My mind was just bouncing around with all the things I needed to be doing and stuff that was happening. And so about mid-Lent now, I will say it's getting a little easier for me. You get more accustomed to the quiet presence that the verse talks about.
Yeah, because you confessed, even in the message, that you struggle a little bit, and you got a wake-up call in front of the bishop.
Yeah. The bishop said, "You never out-preach your need to pray." Uh-huh. And I looked over at my buddy and I said, at the bishop's conference, "I don't pray very much right now. I'm too busy for that." And I was like, "That's not good."
And it was called a day apart, right?
A day apart.
A day apart with the bishop. And so you didn't think you really needed a day apart when it's what you
I told Leslie, my wife, I was like, I don't need to go. And she's like, "Oh, you need to go." And so I went, And she was right.
Somehow things work out in our absence, right? I mean, we feel like we can't get away. Right. Too much to do. That list is too long. Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes that's when God does most of God's work, when we're absent. Mm-hmm. I read a devotion recently that made me really think about that with Jesus. Mm-hmm. There's verses in the Gospels where Jesus tells the disciples, "Look, it's better that I go." Mm-hmm. What? Wait a minute. And they're thinking, what? And it's better that I go. You will really get me when I'm gone.
Yeah.
And that's a mystical kind of thought, but I think sometimes we just have to trust that God is still active and working despite us, always. And so, yeah.
Your other illustration came from the desert mothers and fathers.
Yeah, which is, I know, a group that's near and dear to your heart. I remember thinking as I was preaching it, like, Pastor Randy would really like this, which the story goes, well, the desert mothers and fathers are a group of early Christians in the 3rd and 4th century, 5th century, that ran from Rome and the noise of Rome. And there's a story where a preacher gets up to give a benediction. And these people have left everything. I mean, everything. Their homes, their money, their wealth, all that gone. They went to the desert. And so the preacher gets up and he says, brothers and sisters, now run. And someone says, run from what? And then the preacher covers his mouth and he says, run from this.
Yeah.
And he's saying, run from the chatter, run from all the talking, run from all the words, and get to the place where your heart can become quiet again. Because that's where you'll find kind of what you're looking for. And
that's where Elijah got his restoration. Yeah.
Yeah. And perspective, though.
Right. Yeah.
I think maybe that's the most beautiful part of this whole story. This man starts off burnout and he thinks he's all alone and nobody cares. After he prays, God opens his eyes and he sees that there are 7,000 Israelites that they are not worshiping the God of prosperity. And then God says to him, now share your ministry with Elisha. And so there's this beautiful picture of sharing the ministry, right? Like this one exhausted prophet realizes it's not all about me. I need to share this and I'm not alone. And I think maybe that's one of the greatest signs that you're coming out of a burnout, is I begin to see that all the people that are there for me that I had not seen before. And it's a healing.
Mm-hmm. And the application is pretty obvious. You encouraged our people to take that kind of a break when you need it.
Yeah, I just came up with some different ways where, if you're a parent, kids are making a lot of noise, take a walk. Yeah. Maybe if you're a teacher, you need a break, take a few days. Spring break's just around the corner. And so there's a lot of different ways. But I would suggest always, though, pray, and pray. Because the reason ultimately we get away is not just to be alone, but to be alone with God. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about the spiritual journey, the reason why we get away, again, is not just to have a pleasure cruise, but to be alone with God. And it's there that we find the strength to go back into the world and give ourselves to that which is most important, which I feel like what's most important is the love we know in Christ. And that's what's eternal in the end.
Someone I like a lot, someone I read a lot, talked about God as a conversation partner. And I know that sounds obvious or simple, but it struck me in a kind of a powerful way. God as a conversation partner. You've got to develop some comfortability to be around somebody and call them a conversation partner, or to have a partner in conversation. Mm-hmm. It's not a one way, and it is beyond the silent prayer. Somehow, some way, we are hearing God speak, to us.
Yeah.
And it's not a task that has to be done,
no,
or something that gets marked off the checklist. It's a conversation partner.
Yeah.
It's a friend.
You're comfortable with the reality that God is with you.
Yeah.
I think maybe the best way I can do, this is just how it is for me. I don't hear a voice or anything like that when we say, listen for the voice of God. I don't experience it that way.
Good.
If I did, I mean, might have a few more questions after the podcast, right. But it's like an awareness that gradually grows. That's how it is. Mm-hmm. When I'm driving in the car and it's quiet, if I'm in the right place, I return to that center. So, but yeah.
Okay. So you wrapped it up by saying Lent is about returning to the one who calls us home. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Lent. And it's not about becoming stricter, it's about becoming freer. And the closer we get to God, the idea here is the freer we begin to come. We become. So So what are we talking about this coming Sunday?
All right, so we're going to stick with the 40-day theme, 40 days to freedom. The story is about Jonah. And you have to stop and think about where the 40 even comes, because it doesn't seem to be that of an important detail in the story. But Jonah, of course, is a prophet, and God sends him to Nineveh. Takes him a while to get there, of course, but once he gets there, he says, in 40 days, it's all over for you folks. So that's where the 40 comes in. But this is a fascinating story, and I really love it. And in all of the Hebrew Bible, the mercy of God shines through so strongly, because all throughout the Hebrew Bible, the Hebrew people are balancing God's justice with God's mercy. And sometimes the justice seems to win out over mercy, especially when it comes to dealing with people who are not Jewish, people who are not the Israelites, people who are not the people of God, but they're the outsiders, the pagans, the Gentiles. And so in this story, God has this wonderful mercy despite the protestations of Jonah. He didn't want to go and prophesy to the Ninevites. The Ninevites, this is the capital of Assyria. This is the country that dominated Israel in the north under the divided kingdom that you talked about. But in the end, they receive this mercy. They receive this mercy, and Jonah can't stand it. He can't stand it. So mercy wins, and Jonah, the story ends with a question, which is God saying to Jonah, shouldn't I be good to the Ninevites? Boom. And just like, this reminds me of the parable of the prodigal son. And Jonah reminds me of the older son in that parable. He cannot join the party for his little brother, and Jonah can't join the party for the Ninevites. And so the story holds a mirror up to us to say, how you doing when it comes to people who aren't necessarily like you?
Who are your Ninevites?
Yeah. And then we're not so quickly supposed to jump to the Jesus application, but I couldn't help thinking about loving your enemy. When Jesus said loving your enemy, that's what God did with the Ninevites. So that's a little bit of a tease on what's coming this week.
Good.
All right.
Sounds good.
Very good. Well, thanks a lot for joining us for the podcast. We really do appreciate it. We hope you'll join us here at Methodist Temple if you're free. If you don't have a church that you're a regular member of, you're looking for a church, come check us out here on Sunday morning. Check us out online, and of course, appreciate the fact that you listen to the podcast. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Pastor Podcast with Randy and Andy. We hope you'll join us next week. We see Christ in you.